Aloha. You're watching Cradle Point, part of Ericsson's demo series, where you get hands-on how-to from Cradle Point experts. Now, we're excited today because we're going to share a little bit about our new NetCloud Secure Access Service Edge solution, and it's optimized for 5G environments, allowing you the confidence to connect anything, anywhere. And I'm really excited. We've kind of chatted a little bit. I'm really excited to have the lead product manager on, Daniel Scarberry. Daniel, how's it going?
It's pretty good, Peter. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good myself. So, Daniel, one of the claims we make in the NetCloud SASE solution is that we can, or our customers, I should say, can set up a network in 6 minutes, or under 6 minutes is the claim. So we're here to basically prove that out. Are you ready to do it?
Absolutely. Let's take a look. Let me share my screen and let's do it in 6 minutes. You got the stopwatch ready?
And let's start the clock.
All right. So I'm going to go ahead and start out here. And you can see NetCloud Manager from day zero is a multi-tenant supported architecture. So I already have 3 networks built out, but that's for later in the demo. For the 6 minutes, let's go ahead and start our add button, and we're going to create an entirely new Secure Connect Zero Trust network. So let's give this a name, and today I'm going to work through an entire retailer's enterprise policy, from the branch, from the IoT, all the way to the remote worker. So we'll call this the retailer. And we're going to deploy this in our Ashburn region. We're going to finish this up, and that's going to start creating that network. So while that network's created, that's your 3 to 5 minutes from now. And let's say that first minute there was just for me to introduce Secure Connect. So this is going to be the service gateway hosted in the cloud in a microservice unified policy architecture. So while that's provisioning, why don't I go ahead and walk through some of our key use cases and create the policy for this entire retailer.
Sweet.
So I'm going to go ahead and click on the large retailer, and this is just a mimic of that other network that's being created now. And today's demo, we're really focused on our policy-based use cases, really focused on advanced web security services, as well as secure web gateway type of scenarios. So with that, I'm just going to walk through a few policies. The first one, I'm going to go ahead and click the add button on access policy and allow or deny. Well, allow or deny is pretty straightforward. I don't need any advanced engines for this. Well, how about web category-based enforcement of acceptable use policies? We see this not just in the retailer space, but across any vertical. So I hope today the policies I create help you understand these relate to fire departments, mobility sectors, retail sectors, IoT sectors. And in this case, we're just going to deny traffic to very specific categories. Now, in a retailer, we oftentimes will see that there's no user-based authentication. It's a point of sale system, and it's a shared point of sale system. So we'll go ahead and do this at the site level and say any site, any user is going to get this policy applied. This is going to be global across the retailer. Now, when we go to 2, we're going to do that web category-based enforcement, and it's going to be on a very specific category. We're taking acceptable use policy and putting it into a technical enforcement now. In this case, we could say we don't allow gambling at this location or the entire company. In this case, it's an add. Pretty straightforward. It's a deny. There's no need to do further malware prevention or any other advanced reverse browser isolation if we're going to deny the traffic. So this is a top-down hierarchical policy engine. So we're going to go ahead and deny if anything hits this first. That means, well, what about policy number 2? Well, policy number 2, we might want to start adding something like malware prevention for the rest of the internet. That's a pretty good one, Daniel. So why don't we provide malware prevention? And how do you do that? You apply AV and content disarm and reconstruction. Content disarm and reconstruction, short for CDR. This is going to use a profile. We have these profiles, and this one is actually part of our basic profile. So I'm going to put basic at the front of this just so we can reflect on this in a moment. Again, these are global policies that I'm creating right now that I want to apply to remote workers, third parties, on-prem retail workers. And in this case, AV and CDR, we're going to do this to the entire internet. Anything we allow why would you not inspect it for malicious intent? So we're absolutely going to do that. We're going to take our advanced web security services here and enable it this time. And this time we chose that basic profile. Notice we have 4 profiles, and I'm going to walk through each of these profiles during this demo today, really trying to hone in on when do I use a basic profile, when do I use a safe profile, when do I go full isolation, Daniel? So any internet, this is a great use case here for going with basic AV and CDR for malware prevention.
So I see a little notification down there. I keep an eye on the clock. We got a minute 45. Does that indicate that we're there already?
We probably are there, but let me do one more policy to get that second policy out of the way, and then we'll pivot back over there. And
Fair
we're only 45 in, so I got a couple minutes to spare, so I might as well keep this going. I'll keep a good thing going. So if the first one was a basic, really protection mode, right? You want to protect all internet traffic. There's not a third party you wouldn't want to protect. So that was that global one. Well, what about as the malware gets higher risk? So let's keep on the malware prevention use case. And so what if we went to high risk malware prevention? So now that malware prevention is becoming a higher risk to the business. So I'm going to use a different profile this time. And in this case, I'm going to use our secure profile. And in the secure profile, again, global policies. So I'm really not focused on user-based here. And I go into my web category, and we have this next dropdown, which was web reputation. And so I don't care what the web category is, but the web reputation, if it's high risk, I'm going to force a little bit more inspection on this traffic. So in this case, I'm going to run it through full reverse browser isolation, but in high performance mode. So in high performance mode, the customer impact, minimal, almost unrecognizable to the end user that we are performing this browser isolation. And that's because we aren't isolating the browser session in a virtual and then streaming it to the user. We're actually just isolating the malicious objects and scripts within that website. But we're also going to do our antivirus scanning, just like we did in basic, and our content disarm and reconstruction, meaning any file type mismatches, any PDFs that are downloaded, any malicious scripts that are being downloaded in those objects, we're going to clean those up and present them to a user in a protected manner. So that's our secure profile. And again, I'm trying to relate these use cases, not just to retail, but to many verticals, because these use cases exist anywhere in an enterprise deployment and IoT and retailer. It's everywhere. So now we've got 2 of those profiles. Maybe we'll go back and check that network at this stage.
I think we should, because the timer did go off.
All right, let's go.
Truth.
So we go over here, and it's provisioned. So we're good.
There we go.
We got our timer. So our retail network's there. So just like that large retailer I was just building out, I could go over to this retailer now and say, hey, it's time to build out policy there, right? This is an entire multi-tenant supported architecture. So these aren't shared policies across customers. I think about each of these Secure Connect networks could be a customer. They could be isolated networks. So if one customer wants an isolated zero trust network use case, this is supported out of the gate. I'm going to continue back on that other policy because I really want to show the strength of a unified policy engine where I am stacking policies, because that's really where the value starts to get amplified. I'm managing a single policy engine. I've enforced secure web gateway policies of acceptable use policies. I've enforced reverse browser isolation. That's where we just left off. I've enforced content disarming and antivirus for malware protection, but we still had more profiles to go through. So let's take a look at the other 2. So the other 2, we look at use cases in retailer as point of sale system on a shared machine, store within a store on a kiosk. If you want to provide your users internet access to something like social media, but you don't want that to be downloaded. You say, you know what, you can touch social media, but don't bring any of that. Don't copy into those clipboard conversations. I just don't want any of that, but you can go browse it. I consider that read-only. So maybe I'll look at this as a read-only social media use case. Now, you could apply read-only to other use cases. And in this case, it's global across the company. And in this case, we're going to choose a web category of social media. So in social networking, now we're going to take it from a threat management standpoint and go into that read-only mode. So that's safe mode. And this is saying no copy to clipboard, no downloads. And we're going to add that one in. So we've covered base, we've covered safe, we've covered secure. There was one more profile in here. Let me go ahead and preface this one with that safe profile. And by all means, you could have done full isolation on social media, The problem with that, the user experience on a full isolation of social media where there could be active videos, active music, you may not want to affect the user experience in that manner. So you move into a read-only type of situation.
Right.
Now, our final profile, full isolation. When are we going to go for the big hammer here? Well, personal webmail. This is commonly a use case across the board. If somebody walks up to a store within a store of a shared kiosk and goes to their Gmail account and then walks away, it's unfortunate. Like, that person just left their email logged in. That's not what we want to see.
Yeah, or even all the business centers in hotels. Like, how many times have like been in a hotel, gone to the business center, and the person's Gmail or Facebook or some other thing is still on there on the screen?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's an idea of, protect everybody, protect the business as well. In other use cases, we see it in compliance. We commonly in the multimedia studios, they want to provide their employees the ability to check their Gmail throughout the day, but you have to check that at arm's length. It needs to be a fully isolated experience. But there's also, second side is webmail is not media intensive, right? That when you get a video clip, you're clicking a link, then going to that site. Could be a phishing site, but it's actually a low bandwidth experience. So you're not affecting the user experience. So there's both sides. There's a security story to full isolation, which is the highest security level. There's also a user friendliness that always needs to come into effect when you talk about security.
Yep.
And so
it's
in
a
this
good balance, right? Usability and security, but making sure you stay protected throughout.
Absolutely. And almost every business will choose usability over security. And so you have to make that security more usable. And that's what we're doing with these policies. So in this case, we'll take an application category for webmail, and it's called webmail as an application category. And we're going to go ahead and add that. Now, remember, we're working through our profiles today and trying to tie actual use cases to each profile so that the field understands, when do I use these profiles? How do I use them? How do I communicate them? Well, now this is that full isolation profile. No downloads. Full RBI experience, which means you're going to see, like a fairly substantial user impact on this, but also the highest security environment, right? A fully virtual isolated environment. So we'll add that.
You can't let people open attachments on a corporate network like that, especially from personal email.
Yeah, imagine going to an Apple store, going to your email, downloading an attachment onto a local laptop. They don't want to see that. This is a great use case for that. And that's a great pop-up story for a retailer, store within a store kiosk. There's so many use cases for it. So we're not denying this access, right? What we want to do is provide that user experience, but we want to increase the security level of all of these. And that's what we did today with our 4 profile and our acceptable use policy of allow, deny. But we're not done. This is only one part of the SASE stack. We have remote access. And I'm going to stay in this single policy chain, and I'm going to add ZTNA, right? So with ZTNA, we want remote access to a developer PC. Well, the developer is an employee of ours, and he needs access to a developer machine that he has at headquarters. He comes in one day out of 365, so he just remote accesses in. This is when we start to get surgical. We start to say only Daniel is going to have access to that Daniel developer PC. So I've already went out and named a couple of resources, but this is where it's critical to name Daniel's. This is not a shared VPN. This is not a shared network. It's a zero trust segmented network with name-based resources. So when we want to go to Daniel's PC, we don't want to give Daniel access to the entire corporate subnet. We want to give Daniel access to his PC, not to John's PC and Erica's PC and Shauna's PC and Peter's PC. No, this is for Daniel's PC. And it's not even his PC. It's actually only RDP to that machine or SSH to that machine. We can be very surgical with zero trust. So in this case, we add that access. Now I've added remote access to a trusted employee. What about a trusted third-party use case? Very common with a Cradlepoint customer with IoT assets. They have trusted third parties, MSPs, managing all of their assets, devices behind this. So what we see here is the trusted third-party use case for ZTNA. And these are all slices of ZTNA. So ZTNA trusted third-party access, this is our commerce contractor. Our commerce contractor at the retailer, he manages our commerce back end. We sell assets, we build retail stores, we don't build back ends. Well, contractors do. In this case, Again, we get surgical. We have a group for our commerce contractors in our identity provider that we've integrated with here. And here that commerce contractor is integrated into our Okta account. And we're going to give him access to what? Not Daniel's PC, not the Daniel PC subnet, to the commerce backend. Not subnet-based access to everything within that AWS VPC, very siloed access to just that corporate commerce backend. So we've been very surgical here. Now we've provided 2 use cases for remote access. Yep. Now, there's one other use case here, which is, Daniel, how did you provide access? Everything I provided access here could be done in 2 ways. Cradlepoint routers, known as sites in NCX, in NetCloud SASE, and the NCX Client. So all of these use cases that we've talked about today can be delivered through the NCX Client. All you got to do to get the NCX Client is go to our network helper, Anna, and say, download NCX Client, and that will give you a link to the Cradlepoint support public website to download the NCX Client. So we'll click on that first response that she had, and that will tell you navigate to Cradlepoint support. And we have Windows, Linux, Mac, iOS, iPad support. All of those platforms are supported, and it'll have instructions to how to install it for each of those platforms.
Nice. And it's really cool how you can not only do sort of this, global wide, and I understand, as traffic appears, it goes, one down, so through the list, but you kind of have these global conditions that have to be met. But then, as you were saying numerous times, that surgical precision, getting into specific groups or users, and then even more specific targets, on the back end.
Yeah, and it's how mature we're trying to help the customer mature across that zero trust model. And if we go from the get-go trying to be overly surgical, usability versus security, it will start to lapse and those tables will fall. So
yep.
Customer can really graduate along that. So there's one other customer persona here we're missing, which is the untrusted third party. How do you solve that? He doesn't want the NCX client. You don't want them having the NCX client, but you still need to give them access. And right. One way we can start to leverage that is something with web application isolation is our first foray into how can we solve that use case. And that's through an Okta integration. So with this, you could define a public SaaS application such as Salesforce. And if you want to say, well, how are we going to give clientless access here? Well, instead of doing private resources that require the site-based resources, since this is a web application, publicly accessible, now you can create that resource. You can embed the URL for web application isolation in the identity provider so that that third party can just click the tile that's been assigned to them for Salesforce. And notice now we're in an isolated instance of Salesforce. Now, obviously, you would define the application to be your instance of Salesforce, but this is just a demonstration of how do you take the clientless CASB use case? This is it right here, leveraging web application isolation.
Right. And then you also, because it's isolated, you still have all the various controls and policy enforcements and all the other various things. Like you may want to restrict certain things just in this particular environment, or you just, because it's already isolated, you might let them like have at it, do what you need to do.
It really becomes a feature set of the web application isolation product line. So yeah.
Very cool stuff.
So now we've really focused on, all of that security story, everything that the advanced web security services has brought with ZTNA and SWIG capabilities with acceptable use policies, web category-based enforcement. But I mean, there's another side of this entire unified story, which is when you get those terrible messages from your cable provider that says, hey, this is Comcast, service outage in your area. I get them all the time. How do you solve this, especially if you're a retailer? Well, traffic steering. It's Cradlepoint's sweet spot. SD-WAN, bonding interfaces of cellular, Ethernet, multiple cellular interfaces so that the retailer never goes down. So you start to bond those interfaces. That's one high availability type of use case. You might look at this from a destination and say, look, my Stripe payments are more important than my Teams meetings are. I can reschedule this Teams meeting tomorrow, but if my point of sale system doesn't get this credit card payment through, I lose real dollars today. And so you can start to prioritize those business critical apps all in a single policy management structure here. So SD-WAN and access policies.
Yeah, and that's always been the challenge with some of the SASE solutions in the market today, is that it's, kind of bits and pieces, where this is all done from a single management console.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is a requirement, right? If you're going to provide a full SASE stack in a unified policy management solution, single pane of glass of NetCloud Manager, that's a requirement. And so is agility and the speed of deploying that Secure Connect network and adding sites. Well, for us, it's as simple as, I want to add a pop-up store. Well, all I got to do to add a new site, it's holiday season pop-up. I got 100 of these. Well, we add the holiday season pop-up, and any Cradlepoint router that is drop shipped and powered on will register to your NCM account. All you have to do is click add router here, assign any available routers to that site. I don't have any other routers available right now. They're all assigned to my sites, but it will show up here and you add it and you're done. Now you've grown the business with 2 clicks, more sites, more branches. Simple as that.
And then that hardware automatically just assumes the policy, whatever you assign to it, right?
Absolutely. All of that. Every user you bring online with the NCX client, it's inheriting that policy that we created earlier, the SD-WAN policy and the access policy. Every site you add, we created those with site equals any, which is allowing every site onboarded to just inherit that policy. We could be more surgical and do those by very site-specific groupings, but for this demonstration, we just said, hey, apply these globally so I can grow my business as fast as possible.
And this really is the true definition of secure access service edge, the combination of the network, or just security in general, along with the SD-WAN piece, all combined all together, and just being able to management and, apply a policy is really, really cool.
Yeah, and I think for today's demo, that shows the core growth. We have plenty of visibility we could demonstrate from device posture for user management. So all of those trusted third parties, all those trusted remote workers, everyone that's authenticating, we want to know a little more about where are they authenticating from, what device, what platforms, all of that's here, right? Table stakes. That's NetCloud Manager. It's always been great at doing that visibility and reporting, and NCX just gets to inherit all of that history.
Pretty cool, and it'll probably help with compliance, among other things. When the auditor shows up, show me all your stuff, and just go, here you go. Have a look. Really neat. Cool. Well, thank you so much, Daniel, for this. It actually was like a pretty cool demo. I want to get hands-on myself on this, so I really appreciate it. Hopefully you enjoyed this demo too, folks. If you'd like to learn more about NetCloud SASE, of course, you can visit cradlepoint.com. If you like content like this, give Daniel a like, hit that subscribe button, because we're going to be doing a lot more of these in the demo series. Hey, I really appreciate your time, Daniel. Let's get on again and do something else. How's that?
Sounds good. Have a good one, Peter.
Thank you. So for Daniel, I'm Peter, and we're with Cradlepoint. Thanks for watching.